Welcome to the new class. You must be having quite a time with so many shifts of areas in a short span of time. I am going to tell you about coding theory, application of mathematics in coding theory. When we talk about coding theory, there are different things people mean by it. People sometimes mean cryptography when they talk about coding, sometimes people mean programming when they say coding. They also say a very closely related subject of what I am going to talk about, namely compression. When you have a large file and you want to compress it to a small size for storage or transmission, that is also referred as coding, but I am going to talk about a different kind of coding, and that is what is actually called coding theory. Exactly this phrase is used to refer to that. So, in a communication problem, in a problem of communication, you want to transmit a signal from one place to another. So, I am speaking here, that is being recorded on a microphone, and that signal is to be reproduced in the speakers which are installed around the room, right. So, this is a communication from the microphones to the speakers. The signal that is being recorded at the microphone is to be reproduced exactly or approximately in the speakers. That is the job. Lot of things are going on in between. Actually, lot of this, there is some wireless communication going on between this device and some other device in the back of the room. So, in that process, you have to take care of many things, among which we are not going to consider all the things that go on in this system. We are going to abstract out and simplify the problem, and we are going to consider a particular channel which is very important in the literature in communication, called binary symmetric channel. This is the technical name, but you know the channel very well. All of you know what the channel is. The channel is simply that it is a binary channel. You transmit ones and zeros. You cannot transmit anything else, and what you receive is sometimes erroneous. It is not exactly one or 0 that was transmitted, or sometimes 1 is flipped to 0, 0 is flipped to 1. Okay. Now, usually the number of errors is not large. There is some 10% error or 20% error. There is some probability of error. Okay. So, we assume that some, let us say, p fraction of the bits, which is between 0 and 1. So, p is the probability of error. And the channel is often represented by a butterfly diagram like this, which means that if you transmit the left hand side bits 0 and 1, they denote what is transmitted, and the right hand side bit is denoting what is received. When you transmit 0, you receive 0 with probability 1 minus p, and you receive 1 with probability p. So, p is the probability that the bit will be flipped, you will get an error, right. Similarly, if you transmit 1, you will receive 1 with probability 1 minus p and receive 0 with p. So, the error is symmetric. Whether you transmit 0 or 1, the probability of error is the same. That is why this is called binary symmetric channel. We are going to talk about transmission through this channel. Now, of course, if you simply transmit the raw bits, what will happen is p fraction of them will be received wrongly. Now, that is most of the times not acceptable, okay, for your application. So, what you want to do is reduce the transmission rate a little, but in return we do not want any error. Well, you cannot get exactly no error, okay, that is, you know, easy to want, but not possible to get. So, what we say is that we want to reduce the probability of error to a much lower range, like 10 to the power minus 5 probability of error. So, p may be actually 10%, but we want to reduce the probability of error. Of course, you have to pay in rate. You cannot transmit the same rate that the channel allows you to transmit. You have to transmit at a lower rate. So, what you want to do, so the way it is actually achieved is that you transmit 100 bits, let us say, but you do not transmit 100 bits of message. You do not transmit 100 message bits, because then there will be 10% of errors, and you have no way of correcting those errors. What you want to do is, we want to transmit maybe 80 bits of message and then add some redundancy, okay, add some mechanisms of checking whether there is error, okay. So, some redundant bits will be added, so that at the receiver, if there are 10% of errors, you will be able to know which bits are erroneous and you will be able to correct them, right. So, if you transmit 100 bits, you will transmit message bits here, and then you will transmit some redundant bits, which are used for checking for errors, okay, also called check bits. Now, if you want to correct more errors, you have to have more redundant bits, but of course, you want to have a good rate as well. So, how is the rate computed? Rate is computed as, you just take the number of message bits you are transmitting, that is the useful transmission. Check bits are redundant, they do not give you any information about the message, they give you information about the errors, okay. So, you count the number of message bits divided by the total number of bits. This is the, so if this is n and this is k, then k by n is the rate of the code. Now, this is called coding and this is called rate of the code. You take k number of message bits, you do something with it and expand to n number of bits, like take 80 bits and expand it to 100 bits and transmit. So, your rate of transmission is 0.8, 80 by 100, okay. So, you have reduced the transmission rate. It could be 1, if you transmitted all the message bits, it would have been 1, but then you would not be able to correct errors. With this transmission rate 0.8, hopefully you will be able to correct some amount of error and your probability of error effectively will reduce, that is the expectation, okay. So, what we want is that we want on one hand k by n to be large, we do not want to reduce k by n to too small number, because then you will be transmitting at a very low rate. So, we want good rate, but at the same time we want low probability of error. These are conflicting demands, but of course, they have to be conflicting, otherwise there will not be any engineering research. So, now how to do this? How to design a code? How to go about designing a code? Now, what you are going to see is that I consider, if you see that if you consider all the n bit sequences, there are 2 power n number of such sequences, 2 power n number of such sequences, vectors or sequences of length n, right. There are 2 power n number of binary vectors of length n. because the check bits depend on the message bits, because the check bits are functions of the message bits, they are not independent bits. So, how many possible n length vectors are you going to transmit? You are not going to transmit all possible 2 power n vectors, right, because once you fix the first k message bits, the other bits are already decided. So, there are only 2 power k number of such vectors that you are going to transmit. So, this set of all 2 power n vectors, out of these 2 power n vectors, you are going to transmit only a small subset of 2 power k vectors, right. They do not look like, they are clustered in one place, they are actually scattered at different places. Okay. So, there are 2 power k vectors and you are going to transmit only those, right. Now, how should you choose? Now, this decides, you have chosen k and n, this decides the rate. Now, the probability of error is determined by how you have chosen those 2 power k vectors out of the 2 power n vectors. Okay? Now, we have to first know how to choose those vectors. Now, what is going to happen is that if you transmit one n length vector, so let us consider this problem, how to choose these vectors. You have these 2 power n vectors. Now, I am not going to transmit all these vectors, I am going to first choose a subset and then I am going to choose a subset. How do I choose? Now, let us say I choose one by one, I choose one vector somewhere, you randomly choose 2 power n length vector. Now, next vector, suppose I choose this vector to be all zeros, this is a vector all zeros. Then if I also choose 1 0 0 all zeros, just first bit is changed, I also choose this, then what will happen is that if the channel introduces one error, the first bit is flipped, then you have no way of knowing which vector was transmitted. Okay? So, you will not be able to correct that error, just one error is introduced by the channel and receiver fails, right. We do not want such selection of vectors. Now, what is the reason that these 2 vectors are not good choice? The reason is that they are too near each other, just one bit is different between them. Okay? So, this what I talked about just now is called the Hamming distance between the vectors. So, Hamming distance d, it's different from Euclidean distance that you know of between real vectors, it's often given a subscript of h to denote Hamming. Okay? This is simply the number of components between in the 2 vectors which are different. Okay. So, we do not want to select, now these 2 vectors have a Hamming distance of 1, that is the smallest Hamming distance. Now, we do not want to select such vectors, we want to select 2 power k vectors from here, so that you take any pair of code words. Now, these vectors are called code words, the ones that you are going to transmit, and their collection is called the code. Okay? So, you are going to transmit a code word out of the code. Now, you do not want to select code words such that there are 2 code words which are too near each other, because then what can happen is that you transmit this and the channel moves it somewhere here, and this is midway between these or maybe even nearer to this, then you will not be able to decode it correctly, because it will look like, for the receiver it will think that this was transmitted. Okay? So, we want to maintain a good Hamming distance between any pair of code words. This Hamming distance between any 2 code words is to be large. Okay? Now, we often consider codes which are linear. Now, what do you mean by linear codes? if you have studied linear algebra, you will know what is a vector space, what is a subspace, what is linear independence between vectors and so on. But roughly speaking, you can actually treat these n-length vectors as vectors, actually vectors, and do everything that you do typically for vectors. You can add them, you can subtract. Adding and subtraction is the same in case of binary vectors, but you can add them, you can multiply by scalars, okay, numbers. Now, here the choice of numbers is not great, it is just 0 and 1. Multiply by 0, it becomes 0 vector, multiply by 1, you get the same vector, but you can add them, okay. So, you can do all operations that you are used to doing for vectors. You can do matrix multiplication with vectors and so on. It is just going to be binary, everything will be binary. Now, what is addition? That is fundamental. What is addition between 2 bits? It is simply XOR. 1 plus 1 is 0, okay. Mathematically putting, it is addition modulo 2. First add, then take modulo 2, mod 2. So, in terms of electronics, it simply, you implement it simply using XOR gate, okay. Right. So, now what is a linear code? So far we have said that we are going to try to select a set of 2 power k code words so that there is good Hamming distance between each other, right. And one straightforward way to understand how good a code is to check what is the minimum Hamming distance between any pair of code words. You take this pair of code words, check the distance, take this pair, check the distance, all pairs of code words, you check the distance between them and take the minimum of all those. In other words, take the nearest 2 code words in the code, their distance is the minimum Hamming distance of the code. So, that is the worst distance in the code, and that is a parameter that is considered as the worst case, Hamming distance in the code, and that is often taken as a measure of performance for a code. That tells you how good the code is. Now, for a linear code, when we say code is linear, we simply mean that if you take 2 code words, you add them. Now, this is no more just distance and bits and so on. This is now addition, subtraction, everything is coming in. It is now algebra. Okay. So, you add 2 vectors. If you take 2 code words, add them, the result is also a code word. Okay. In other words, this subset of code words that you have taken as the code, it is closed under addition. You take any 2 vectors in that subset, add them, you get another code word. It is also in the subset. Okay. Now, in terms of linear algebra language, you will say that this is a subspace of the n dimensional space of 2 power n binary vectors. Okay. So, it is a k dimensional subspace because there are 2 power k elements. So, it will be a k dimensional subspace. Okay. Now, so it is a, we are going to consider such codes which are linear, by which we mean that it is a subspace. Okay. If you are not very comfortable with the language of linear algebra, do not worry, it simply means that you take 2 code words, you add them, you get another code word. It does not go outside, the result is not outside, it is still inside the code. Right. Now, for such a code, you can check, you can show very easily that, because you see, you take 2 code words, A, let us call A vector and B vector, you take 2 code words. First of all, it can be checked very easily that a linear code will always have the all 0 vector all 0 vector must be there, it must be a code word, because why should it be a code word? Because take A and A itself, take the two vectors to be itself the same vector, add them, what do you get? Add meaning XOR, you get 0. So it should not be outside because it is a linear code, right. So the all 0 vector must be inside, it is there. Now you take A and B vectors, you add them, what do you get? How many components will be non-zero in that resulting vector A plus B, right. So the number of non-zero components in A plus B is exactly the Hamming distance between A and B. Now this number of non-zero components is called the Hamming weight, WT for weight. Hamming weight of a vector is the number of ones in A. Okay. So weight of Hamming weight of A plus B is nothing but the Hamming distance between A and B. Is this clear? Number of components which are different in A and B, okay, exactly those components will become 1 when you XOR them, right. So this way you can show, and remember A plus B is inside the code, it is also a code word. So if anything, any number, if DH, if suppose 5 is a Hamming distance in the code, 5 is some distance between two code words, okay, then there is also a code word whose Hamming weight is 5. Why? Because you simply add them, you will get a code word whose Hamming weight is 5, and vice versa. If you have a Hamming weight 5 vector code word, then there are also two vectors, two code words whose Hamming distance is 5. Why? Because 0 and that vector, because 0 is a code word, all 0 is a code word, and that vector has exactly that Hamming distance, right. So instead of checking all pairs of code words and finding their Hamming distance and taking the minimum, what can we do? We can simply check their Hamming weights. Take every code word, check the Hamming weight and take the minimum Hamming weight, not the all 0 vector, that has Hamming weight 0. Take all non-zero code words and take the Hamming weight of them, take the minimum. So instead of talking about Hamming distance, we are going to talk about Hamming weight of code words, okay. So let us write down the bottom line of what we discussed. Minimum Hamming distance of a linear code is same as the minimum Hamming weight of the code, right. And when you say minimum Hamming weight, we do not take the Hamming weight of the all 0 vectors, of course that is 0, right. Now we are going to consider linear codes, but we are actually going to consider a special class of linear codes called cyclic linear codes. What are cyclic codes? They have even more structure than linear codes. Linear codes are nice, they are subspace, so you can use algebraic techniques to design and decode, but even that structure is not enough. It is still a very difficult problem to design good codes and decode for the receiver, okay. So we need more structure so that everything becomes easier. So we are going to consider cyclic codes. This is a very old family of codes, and what it means is that if you take any code word, you cyclically rotate it, cyclically shift it once, twice, thrice, does not matter, you will still get a code word. For instance, suppose 1000, this is a code word, Suppose this is a code word. Then you cyclically rotate it in any direction you want, 0, 1, 0. This is also a code word, right? Rotate it again, rotate again, 1, it is also a code word. All these are code words. If 101 is a code word, all others are zeros, then its rotated versions, left rotated version, for example, 0, 1, then 0, 1, this 1 goes to the end. This is also a code word. Okay? You can rotate it any number of times. So, any code word, its rotated versions are also code words. So, it is cyclic code in that sense. Such codes are called cyclic codes. Cyclic codes. Whenever one talks about cyclic codes, usually one also assumes linear codes. So, we are going to talk about cyclic linear codes even when we are not explicitly mentioning them to be linear. Okay? So, we are going to talk about cyclic linear codes. Now, for cyclic codes, those of you who remember a little bit of linear algebra, you will know that for a linear code, for a subspace, a way to describe a subspace is simply to give a basis, a few vectors which will generate all the vectors in the subspace. If you simply mention those vectors, I will know which subspace you are talking about. You do not have to mention all the elements in the subspace. You have to simply give a small number of vectors called basis, which will generate all the vectors and which are linearly independent. Okay? So, those vectors, now this is not unique, there are many basis sets. So, you can pick any basis set and give it to me, I will know which subspace you are talking about. Now a code, a linear code is a subspace. So, you can specify a linear code by giving a basis. In other words, a collection of vectors. How many? Its dimension is k. So, you will have k vectors. Simply write them as rows. Every vector is a row vector. So, there are k rows. You can write them in a matrix form, and that matrix is called a generator matrix of the linear code. Okay? So, these are basis vectors. These are basis vectors. Okay? Please feel free to ask questions if you have any. Now, there is another matrix which is important in the theory of linear codes, which is called the parity check matrix, which is a matrix usually denoted by H. So, this is the generator matrix. And there is another matrix denoted by H, which will have n minus k rows and of course n length, so that H times any code word transpose is 0 vector. This 0 vector is of length n minus k. A transpose, A is a code word for any code word A. Okay. All the vectors A which satisfy this condition are also code words. These n minus k vectors rows of H are linearly independent. Usually the parity check matrix is taken that way. You do not want any redundant rows, okay? Linearly independent rows. Every row, its inner product with any code word is 0. That is what this relation says. How do you do matrix vector multiplication? This row times A transpose is 0. Every row times that A transpose is 0. You are taking inner product, dot product. Okay. Now, this is called parity check matrix. I am rushing over all these things. What I have talked about so far needs some 4 or 5 classes to cover usually. So, I am just glossing over all these. You may not understand in detail any of these, but hopefully you are making sense of some of what I am saying. Now, any of these two matrices G and H can be used to specify the code. You can give me, if you have designed a code, you can either give me G to say what code you have designed, or you can give me H. Okay. How do you know the code from H? This set of all vectors which satisfy this condition are the code words. Okay. And there is a simple way to get G from H and H from G. I will not go into that details. Okay. Now, I am going to consider cyclic codes. What are cyclic codes again? If you have a code word, you cyclically rotate in any direction, you get another code word. Okay. Such codes are usually also associated with polynomials. So, let me elaborate on that. Suppose you have a vector A, which is A0, A1, A2 up to An minus 1. Okay. Instead of, if you want to specify this, okay, when you transmit, these are bits, okay, zeros and ones only. When you want to transmit, you will of course transmit it as 1 0 0 etc. But you can think of that vector also as a polynomial. No one prevents you from interpreting that vector in any way you want, right. So, let us consider the polynomial version of this vector. How? We are going to say that this is not a vector, this is actually a polynomial like this. There is a reason for doing this, you will know that in a moment. So, whenever I transmit a vector A, I am going to say I am actually transmitting this polynomial. Okay. So, a code word is not a vector, it is actually a polynomial of degree at most n minus 1. If it is degree 5 and not 10, not 100, then it means all the other things are zeros after that. Okay. Now, a code is then a set of polynomials like that. Instead of viewing them as vectors, I am going to view them as polynomials, a collection of polynomials of degree at most n minus 1. And when you say it is cyclic code, what do you mean by that in the language of polynomials? It means that what is cyclically shifting it to the right? Now, I am shifting it to the right. A naught becomes A naught x. a1 multiplication by x, but what happens to the last an, x power n, an minus 1 x power n, but you cannot have degree n, your degree has to be at most n minus 1. So, what do you do with that? You take modulo x power n minus 1. So, x power n becomes 1. So, it becomes the constant term. Okay? So, cyclic shift, so if you multiply by x modulo x power n minus 1, then you get a n minus 1 plus a naught x plus a 1 x power x square, a n minus 2 x power n minus 1, right. So, when we say it is cyclic, we actually mean in terms of polynomials that if you multiply any code word by x modulo x power n minus 1, it remains a code word, it is just another code word. Okay. So, this is actually very nice, but all the nice things about it cannot be explained in half an hour. So, you are going to skip that. If you are interested, I will refer some books at the end of the class and you can look at them. Such codes in terms of polynomials, if you look at them, can be described very nicely, very easily. They are called ideals and they can be described with a single polynomial, okay, whose cyclic, from all the code words can be generated from that single polynomial. It is called the generator polynomial. Okay. So, that what do you do with that generator polynomial? It is a single polynomial, you cyclically shift it, you get many polynomials, and they give you a basis, a generating set. You can then take linear combination of those vectors and get the whole code. Okay. Just like parity check matrix, what was parity check matrix? The matrix which satisfied this condition. All the vectors which satisfy this condition are code words. There is, so this generator polynomial is somewhat like the generator matrix, but it is a single polynomial. By cyclically rotating it, you get all the vectors which will generate the whole code. Okay. Similarly, there is a parity check. There is a parity check polynomial. There is a parity check polynomial. It has the property that you take any code word, just like this relation for parity check matrix. This parity check polynomial has the property that for any code word polynomial, okay. Take the code word and consider it as a polynomial, and let me denote that by a of x. It is just the polynomial version of the vector a. Okay. For any code word polynomial ax, if you multiply ax with hx, hx is the parity check polynomial, and then take modulo x power n minus 1, it will be 0. In other words, ax times hx will be a multiple of x power n minus 1, okay, for any code word. A set of all code polynomials which satisfy this condition is actually the set of code words. Okay. So, cyclic codes can be described with either the generator polynomial or the parity check polynomial. You design a code, you can mention what the generator polynomial is, what is the parity check polynomial, and that is it. In fact, you look at any wireless standard where such cyclic codes are used. Cyclic codes are still in use today. Is the oldest family, like BCH codes, Reed-Solomon codes, they are still used today, and they will be simply described using their parity check polynomial or generator polynomial. Okay. Now, this is fine, but the problem still remains about how to design a code, how to design a good code. Now, what is a good code? We want a certain good rate, good Hamming distance. If it is a linear code, and we are going to consider a linear code, good Hamming weight, minimum Hamming weight should be good. Okay. Okay. So, at least we should know, suppose the channel has a certain 10% error probability, then I would like to correct up to maybe 15 errors. Right? That decision is yours, the designers, but once I decide that I want to correct up to 15 errors, I should know how to go about designing such a code, which will give me that ability. Now, what is the rate I can get for that ability? That I have to see. I will try to design and then see what rate I can get. Now, for that, you should have a mechanism for finding or estimating the minimum Hamming weight or minimum Hamming distance of a code. Okay. Often, for a large code, codes are of huge length, like 256, 500, 12, 1000, this kind of lengths, and it may seem child's play to you that 500 length, what is the big deal, there are only 500 bits, but no, think of the code space. How many code words, how many total vectors are there? 2 power 500, there you are, right. Now, if you take 300 message bits, 2 power 300 vectors, can you compute the Hamming distance between pairs of code words by brute force? Okay, out of 2 power 300 code words, you want to find the minimum Hamming distance. By brute force, impossible, right. So, you need to find mathematical techniques to know what is the minimum Hamming distance of that code. Now, often, like if you have designed a cyclic code, you have to have a way of knowing the Hamming distance from Hx or Gx, the generator polynomial or the parity check polynomial. When you design a code, you will know what is Gx or what is Hx. From that, can you find the Hamming distance? Now, we have no straightforward way of finding the Hamming distance. In fact, we have no computationally efficient way of computing the minimum Hamming distance of a cyclic code. Okay. So, you cannot implement a program which will finish in reasonable time and give you an answer for your designed code. So, now you have to lower your expectation further and say, I do not care about the exact Hamming distance, at least give me some idea, right, give me some estimate. Estimate is not good enough. If I say the Hamming distance is about 45, okay. Now, suppose the Hamming distance is 40, you will think it is 45. If it is 45, you will be able to correct a certain number of errors, okay, actually 22 errors. But now, if the Hamming distance is 40, 22 errors happen and you decode wrongly. That is not acceptable. Okay. If you want to sell, if you design that way, design a product that way and then try to sell it, they want a guarantee. They do not want an estimate of the performance. Okay. You say up somewhere about 22 errors it can correct, not acceptable. You have to say that it will be able to correct any number of errors up to 20, then it is a guarantee. So, you want a guarantee. In other words, you want a guarantee on the minimum Hamming distance, that the minimum Hamming distance of the code is at least 45, not about 45. you say at least 40, even that is useful information, right. So, we want to have good lower bounds on Hamming distance, right. The first such lower bound, and even today the most important such lower bound for cyclic codes, there are minor improvements here and there by others, but the most important lower bound is still what is called BCH bound. There is also a family of cyclic codes called BCH codes. So, this is BCH bound. If you tell me Hx, using BCH bound I can give you a lower bound on the minimum Hamming distance of that code. Okay. There is, you can design codes using this BCH bound. Suppose you want now 15 errors to be corrected, then you want 31 Hamming distance, at least 31 should be the Hamming distance of the code, 15 times 2 plus 1, okay, that is the rule. I am not going to explain, this is actually quite simple argument, but I will skip it. You want a code with minimum distance, minimum Hamming distance at least 31. Now, it is easy to, BCH bound will tell you how to design a Hx which will give you such a code with minimum Hamming distance at least 31. It will tell you how to design a cyclic code. Okay. Now, I am going to tell you that BCH bound in the rest of the time, okay, and what is the principle behind it and the principle of the proof of BCH bound. It is based on a very simple idea, mathematical idea. Okay. Before I go into that, is there any question?
Hamming weight also some role, Hamming distance and Hamming weight.
So, we are going to consider linear codes, minimum Hamming weight and minimum Hamming distance are the same for them. So, when I say minimum Hamming distance is the same thing as minimum Hamming weight. Okay. But the argument, the proof for BCH bound will be in terms of minimum Hamming weight, but it also tells you minimum Hamming distance. Okay. Now, before we go into BCH bounds, we need to understand so these codes have to be considered over what is called a larger fields, finite fields. Now, let me take a slight detour and tell you about this fascinating, mathematical area, area of algebra called finite fields. Now, what is so before talking about finite fields, you need to know what are fields. So, a field is simply sets like real numbers, complex numbers, rational numbers, where you can do addition, multiplication and also division by non-zero numbers. Okay? Rational numbers, you take 2, 1 by 2 is also a rational number. So, you can divide by 2, you will get another rational number, but not the set of integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, minus 1, minus 2, all that. If you divide by 3, like 2 by 3, divide 2 by 3, you get 2 by 3, it is not an integer. So, it is not a field. You have to be able to divide also, this is very important. Okay? Now, all these fields that you are used to dealing with are infinite fields. So, you are in fact so comfortable working with infinity, rational numbers, real numbers, complex numbers, they are all infinite sets. But we want finite fields. In coding theory, throughout you consider finite fields. The smallest such field is 0, 1. The set of 0 and 1 you can add, you can multiply, natural. Addition is modulo 2, that is it. You can divide by non-zero number. The only non-zero number is 1. Dividing by it is just does nothing. Okay? It is a finite field. There are more finite fields. In fact, 0, 1 up to p minus 1. Take any prime number like 5, 3, 7 and take up to p minus 1 like 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2, take p equal to 3. 0, 1, 2 is a set. And take modulo p addition and multiplication. Okay? These two are the operations, addition operation and multiplication operation. They are not normal addition and multiplication. You have to do addition and multiplication and then take modulo p to bring it inside that set. Okay? And then you can prove that you can also divide. It simply means that you take any number here like 0, 1, 2. There is an inverse of 2. What is the inverse? 2 itself. 2 times 2 is modulo 3 is 2 times 2 modulo 3 is 1. So 2 times 2 is 1 modulo 3, which means that 2 is its own inverse. 2 is nothing but 1 by 2 modulo 3. So that is the algebra you have to do. Whenever there is 1 by 2, you have to, you want to divide by 2, you have to do this way. Similarly, you take 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 modulo 5, addition and multiplication. It is a field. You can divide, you can find inverse of every element, every non-zero element, and as a result you can divide. Division of 2 by 3 is nothing but multiplication of 2 with the inverse of 3. 2 times 1 by 3 is nothing but 2 by 3, right? So you have to be able to find multiplicative inverse of every non-zero number. Okay? And there is one in such a set, you can check. 3 times something is 1 modulo 5. What is that? 3 times 2 is 1 modulo 5. 2 times something is 1 modulo 5. What is that? 3. 5 times something is 1 modulo, 4 times something is 1 modulo 5. 4 itself. 4 times 4 is 16, which is 1 modulo 5. So there is something which is inverse of every non-zero number here. Okay? This happens for every prime number p. Now there are actually more finite fields. These are not the only finite fields. For any such prime number and any integer r, there is a finite field with p power r elements. These finite fields have p elements, 0 to p minus 1, right? But for every r, integer r, and every prime number p, there is a finite field of size p power r. All that is not so important for us, but one of them is important. The case of p equal to 2, the binary case, but not just the binary field 0, 1, it is so called extensions. I want a field of size 2 power 100. Such fields are important for us. Okay? So let me give you an example of such a finite field. I want, let us say, a finite field with 4 elements, 2 power 2. My set of elements is 0, 1, x and 1 plus x. Now x is just an indeterminate, it is a variable. Okay? It is a placeholder, it does not mean anything. Okay? It is just a symbol. But you can add. How do you add these polynomials? Just like polynomial addition, but binary. So whenever you want to add x and 1 plus x, what is the coefficient of x? So it becomes 1, this 1 comes here, plus x plus x. coefficient of x is 1. So, x common 1 plus 1, x times 1 plus 1. What is 1 plus 1 in binary? 0. So, it vanishes. Okay? That is how you add. Modulo 2 addition of the coefficients of the polynomials. You are adding two polynomials. Addition of polynomials is nothing but addition of the corresponding coefficients. But the coefficients are binary from this field, 0, 1 field. There the addition is modulo 2 XOR. So, you add that way. Okay? Most importantly, what is the multiplication? Multiplication is not just modulo 2, it is modulo a polynomial, because when you multiply two polynomials, the degree increases. The degree increases. What is x times x? X times x. What is x times x? This is x square. X square is not even there in that set. So, you have to bring it inside. So, you take modulo, can anyone guess? Huh? You cannot guess. X square plus x plus 1. Okay? Multiplication is modulo this polynomial. There is a reason for choosing this polynomial, and I am not going to discuss this. You need to take a degree 2 polynomial and it has to be irreducible, which means that it is a prime like polynomial. You cannot factorize it. Okay? You have to take such a polynomial of degree 2, because this 2 power 2, that number 2 tells you that. Okay. Do not worry about this, you will not understand this very clearly in this short time. This is just an example. So, x square, right, this becomes x square, but x square modulo x square plus x plus 1, if you divide x square by x square plus x plus 1, what will be the remainder? Let us do that division. X square plus x plus 1, right? 1, oh sorry, there is no space here, 1, and then x square plus x plus 1, okay, cancels, minus x, minus 1 and plus 1 are the same, because 1 plus 1 is 0. So, 1 is same as minus 1 in binary field. Okay. So, all these strange things happen, but you will get used to it once you work with it for a while. 1 is same as minus 1. So, this is x plus 1. So, x square is nothing but x plus 1. Now, that is an element in this set, right. So, x square is, what is x times x plus 1? It is x square plus x. If you divide that by x square plus x plus 1, you will get 1 modulo x square plus x plus 1. Okay. Now, our codes are in general codes over such big fields. All such elements of these can be also represented by binary vectors like coefficients, the constant coefficient and the coefficient of x. Just write them side by side as two components, you get a length 2 vector. So, elements of such finite fields can be expressed as binary vectors. That is why it is important for us communication engineers, because you can transmit those vectors. They are just, so you can transmit an element x. Normally you do not know how to transmit x. What is x? But then x is nothing but 0, 1, because 0 is the constant term, 1 is the coefficient of x. So, it is 0, 1. You will represent it that way and transmit 0, 1. Okay? That is why such finite fields are useful for us. Now, in general you can construct finite fields of size 8, 16, 32. If you have a finite field of size 32, its elements can be expressed in 5 length vectors, because 2 power 5. They will be actually degree 4 polynomials. They can be expressed as as 5 length vectors, constant term, coefficient of x square, x cube, x4. Okay, and you can then transmit that 5 length vector, binary vector, right, through that binary symmetric channel. Now, coming back to cyclic codes, if you have a parity check polynomial like this, a polynomial, this polynomial will have, like, you know, real polynomial. If I give you a real polynomial, it will have some roots, right, but the roots may not be always real numbers, they may be complex numbers. Okay. In fact, if I give you a degree 3 real polynomial, you can find exactly 3 roots, in general complex roots, 3 complex roots. They may be repeating also, that is okay, but total 3 roots, counting multiplicities. Some roots may be there multiple times, you have to count them. Okay. So, a degree n polynomial has n roots, but not necessarily real roots, they are in the bigger field, complex field. Similarly, even though the polynomial is binary, if you take an n degree polynomial hx, it will have exactly n roots, but not binary roots in a bigger field, like that field of size 8, field of size 32, that kind of field. Okay, extension field of the binary field. And you have to find those roots, it is very simple. There is some algebra to know, okay, in which field, which bigger field. For real numbers there is a fixed complex field where you will find all roots, but for binary fields it depends on the polynomial. For some polynomial you have to go a bigger finite field, for some polynomials it is a smaller finite field, but there is a way of knowing. Okay. Now, instead of telling what is hx, I can also tell you what are the roots of hx. I tell you, okay, in this extension field these are the roots, okay, and then that is it. You will know what is hx also by multiplying all the factors x minus root. Okay. Now, another good thing about these finite fields, a very nice thing and very different from infinite fields that you are used to, is that finite fields, these elements are can be seen. There is a single element, let us call it alpha, which is called the primitive element of the finite field, so that all the non-zero elements are its powers. This is very different from infinite fields. So, there is 0, 1, sorry about this, 0, 1, and then there is alpha, it is alpha power 0 is 1, so it is also a power of alpha, then alpha square up to, if p power r, that number of elements is called q, then alpha power q minus 2. So, how many elements? Alpha power 0, 1, 2 up to q minus 2, that is q minus 1, and then there is the 0 element, total q elements. Okay. All the non-zero elements are powers of alpha. Okay. So, every non-zero element is a power of alpha. So, when I want to mention, when I want to specify to you what are the roots of hx, where I have designed a code and I want to tell you which code I have designed, I will tell you the roots of hx, and you know that roots of hx will be in this finite field. It depends simply on the length n. Okay. So, in that finite field it will be some set of those powers of alpha. 0 may be there, this 0 may be there, 0 will not be there actually in this case, it simply means x will not be a root for such things, and I am not going to discuss why here, but So, there is a subset of these powers of alpha which are roots of Hx. I can simply mention which powers of alpha are the roots of Hx. Okay. Now, BCH bound tells you that suppose alpha power 2, alpha power 4, alpha power 5, I will give you an example. Suppose alpha power 6, alpha power 9, these are the roots of Hx. Suppose. Then I will see the longest consecutive powers of alpha which are roots. In this case 4, 5, 6 are consecutive, and that is good for us. That is good for the Hamming distance of the code. Hamming distance is like health of the code. Okay, I mean it denotes how good the code is. So, these consecutive roots are good for the Hamming distance. If you have 3 consecutive roots, then the Hamming distance is at least 4, 3 plus 1. If you have 5 consecutive roots, the Hamming distance is at least 6. That is the BCH bound. I am not going to write it up for you, but time is running out, right. Number of consecutive roots, consecutive powers of alpha. When I say consecutive roots, I mean the consecutive powers of alpha which are roots of Hx, the parity check polynomial, plus 1. Okay. That is a lower bound on the Hamming distance of the code. At least that much is the Hamming distance. This bound can be loose, may not be very efficient, but this is a useful bound. Okay. Now, the proof of this is based on simply van der Monde matrix, the fact that van der Monde matrix has non-zero determinant. Okay. It is a very simple underlying core idea is van der Monde matrix, which all of you know. Okay. What is van der Monde matrix? Again, we are going to consider these matrices over finite fields. You know it for infinite fields, but the same results hold for finite fields. Van der Monde matrix is a matrix constructed by taking some distinct numbers A0, A1, A2 up to AL, let us say, and then its consecutive powers. You start with some I power, and then you take A0 I plus 1, A1 I plus 1, A2 I plus 1, AL I plus 1, A0 I plus, let us say T, A1 I plus T, etc., AL I plus T. Right. So, there are T consecutive roots, consecutive powers of every number. To start with, you have taken those numbers to be distinct. Then, and if your L is same as T, sorry, this suppose you take L itself here, L, and then this is a square matrix. It has non-zero determinant. This full rank is L plus 1. Okay. This is van der Monde matrix. The proof is very simple. All of you have studied this in engineering mathematics or somewhere in your courses. Now, when I say Hx has a root Hx, remember Hx times Ax is 0 modulo x power n minus 1. So, in fact, there is a simple way to construct the parity check matrix from Hx. How do you construct? Just like I explained to you that if you are given a generator polynomial, you can cyclically you can take that vector corresponding to the polynomial cyclically shift that vector many times, and then take the minimum number of ones which are linearly independent, maximum number of ones that are linearly independent, and that will be a generator matrix. You can take the linear combinations of those cyclically shifted generator polynomial and get all the code words, right. So, you can construct a generator matrix from the generator polynomial. Similarly, you can take Hx, expand it, write it as a vector, and then cyclically shift it up to like n minus k, total n minus k cyclically shifted versions. If you take, they will give you a parity check matrix. So, Hx is like H naught plus H1 x plus H n minus k minus 1. In fact, it will be this degree. Again, this is something I cannot explain in a short time, but its degree will be related to this k this way. And what you can do is you can shift it. So, you can take this corresponding vector H naught, H1 up to H n minus k minus 1, this vector, and fill it with zeros to make it n length vector, and then cyclically shift it H naught, H1, H n minus k minus 1, zeros, and so on, 0, H naught, H1, H n minus k minus 1. You can check that there are total how many? I might have done a mistake. This will be k minus 1. This will be k minus 1. Then there will be total n minus k rows. Okay? N minus k. So, this will be n minus k by n minus k rows, and this will be a parity check matrix. When we say that there is a when you say that alpha power, let us say when you say alpha power I is a root of Hx, when you say alpha power I is a root of Hx, what you mean is that H naught plus H1 alpha power I plus H k minus 1 alpha power k minus 1 is 0, right. And this Hx actually should be Gx, the way I have stated. Okay. By trying to shorten the time, I think there is a further mistake here. This will be Gx, and then think of everything to be the generator polynomial, and this is the generator matrix. Okay. Then what will happen is that all these, so these are the roots of the generator matrix. So, you can specify the code by either specifying the roots of the generator matrix, generator polynomial, or the roots of the generator, the parity check polynomial. Okay. Either way, you will be able to know what is the code, but the BCH bound, the way I have stated, is using the roots of the generator polynomial. Okay. Now, if you have the generator polynomial, then this will give you a generator matrix. By taking linear combination of the rows of this matrix, you will get all the code words, right. Then okay. So, the Gx has these roots. So, this is x minus alpha power I, x minus alpha power I plus 1 up to x minus alpha power I plus t minus 1. Okay. Then what one can show is that every code word is a multiple of Gx. Okay, that is the definition of Gx, that you can multiply any polynomial and you will get all the code words. So, every code word also has these roots, and okay, this is going to take a little longer than I thought. I think we will skip it right now. It is going to take longer. But the proof is based on Vandermonde matrix. You can show that if you take, if this is to happen, that every code word has these roots, it will mean that they satisfy a set of parity check conditions, which can be written as a matrix, and that matrix will be a Vandermonde matrix, okay, which will guarantee that the code word cannot have less than t plus 1 non-zero components. Okay. If it has a less than t plus 1 non-zero components, then that matrix, it has to happen that so many columns of that Vandermonde matrix have to be linearly dependent, okay, because that matrix times the vector has to be 0, and that vector has, so if you have a matrix, you will get a Vandermonde matrix. It has to satisfy this problem, that this condition, that there are t plus 1 less than this non-zero components. If you multiply such a vector with this matrix, what will happen? It will be a linear combination of the corresponding columns, right. Corresponding to these elements, there will be certain columns, and you will have a linear combination of these columns. Then you have to, this cannot happen, will be shown by picking these columns and forming another matrix, a small matrix. That matrix will also be a Vandermonde matrix and cannot be a 0 rank matrix, cannot be 0 determinant matrix. In other words, those columns cannot be linearly dependent. Okay. So, the details of this will take at least another half an hour. My estimate was wrong, but if you are interested in knowing this, I will give you some reference of books. Okay. One big book in particular will have this proof. Not every proof of BCH bound is based on this Vandermonde matrix. Okay. There are multiple proofs. But as an introduction, I hope you learned something. But if there are questions, let me know.
Here, sir, graduate level students are learning this coding theory.
Sorry?
Coding theory.
Yes.
Here you are teaching it to your undergraduate students.
It is mostly a postgraduate course, but good undergraduate students also register for it. Yes, so they can take it as elective, but it is primarily a postgraduate course. So the course requires at least some level of mathematical maturity, if not mathematical knowledge, some mathematical maturity.
It is only for electrical engineering department or computer science also?
We teach coding theory for electrical students. Anyone can register for it, of course, but as far as I know, computer science department here doesn't teach coding theory.
But it may be very useful for computer.
Yeah, computer science department, it is also a relevant course for computer science department. It simply depends on if there is someone interested in coding theory in the department in any place. So here in computer science, I don't know of anyone who works on coding theory. In fact,
But you see,
there are people in maths department who
like
work.
other university, you see US university, these are only in electrical engineering or computers?
Again, it is taught in both departments. Depends on whether there are people interested, working on coding theory in computer science department or electrical or both. If there are both, they may teach it in both departments, or both students may take in either department. But what I try to teach today is usually half of the course. So BCH bound will come after. Finite fields will take some 3 weeks total to teach, because you need to first gain the get used to linear algebra language, vector space, subspace, basis, all these, because if they are otherwise I have to always change the language depending on what they know, and I cannot teach a course that way. So you have to develop the language, and then fields, finite fields, its properties, they are all used. So now whenever I needed little bit property here and there, like alpha, all the elements are powers of alpha, I simply stated it. But in a course you have to prove these things, you have to give examples and so on. So it's and then cyclic codes, linear codes, their properties, there are a lot of things, and then BCH bound comes. Yeah. So there is a very accessible, nice book by Lean and Costello on error control coding. Also a quite accessible book by Blahut, R.E. Blahut. It's a new book which came in 2005 or something, 2004-5. The name was changed at that time. The name of the book is Algebraic Codes for Data Transmission.
Publisher, can you give the publisher?
If you simply Google will tell you everything you want. Just search Blahut coding theory or this thing, they will tell you. Lean and Kostler. There is of course a very old and masterpiece, but tough to read. McWilliams and Sloan. It is not for first time reading. Okay. Usually McWilliams and SLOAN Sloan. Title of the book I do not remember. You search McWilliams and Sloan, you will get. Okay. But this is not good for first reading. If you are already a coding theorist, this is a good reference book. And there are some very good video lectures, NPTEL video lectures by Andrew Tangaraj, of IIT Madras, and P. Vijay Kumar of IISc, different video lectures. Okay. Both are very good. Andrew Tangaraj just video lectures are especially also good for the later parts, which are LDPC codes and so on. Okay. Any other question? Yes.
Sir, with the help of finite field, can we find out the roots of every polynomial
Of any degree.
Finite fields is a, I mean, finding meaning you want to,
Roots.
so there are roots, okay?
there are roots?
Yeah, but do you mean that you want to find it computationally, you want to write a program to find it, or what do you mean?
Not computation, just on. Is there any? Because quadratic equation we are having the formula. For third order also we are having the formula, but if you go for higher order, we are not having generalized formula.
Right.
So, is there any method to find out the roots of?
So there are methods. Of course, finding roots of polynomials is a very important problem. It is useful in many, including decoding of codes. Decoding of cyclic codes also you need such finding roots, and such things are very useful. Similarly, in many other engineering problems like cryptography and many other problems, finding roots of polynomials is an important problem, and as a result it has been investigated, researched very widely. So people have developed algorithms to find roots of polynomials over finite fields. Certainly. Formula in general, you do not have a polynomial formula as you can expect, but one is usually satisfied if you have efficient algorithms, so that using a computer you can find the roots in real time. For instance, you want to decode, and in real time you want to find, so you should be able to do it fast. Okay. Okay, so if there are no other questions, thank you for your attention.